Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Whether you're here in the Cayman Islands or whether or not you're listening overseas via the web. For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman to provide you, our listening audience, with information. It is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I'm your host, Orit Connor, also known as OC, and you can join me on For the Record every Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Our phone lines are always open, and there is always someone waiting to answer your calls, usually in the form of Susan. We can be reached on our toll-free number, which is 1-800-534-8255 or 949-8037 or 949-6990. You can also email us at fortherecord, one word, fortherecord, at candw.ky. I trust that you had an enjoyable and eventful free weekend. When I say eventful, free means bad things happening, but as far as good events, we hope you did. We see some of the headlines. We see a shooting in West Bay. We see headlines about motorcyclists being injured. We had bad news about a youngster, a teenager being missing, but good news in terms of him being relocated and reunited with his family. We also see it in the headlines that the FCA in the United Kingdom, Financial Conduct Authority, has withdrawn its list of high-risk countries that it had on its website, and I must say congratulations to the Cayman Islands government and the private sector as well for their tenacity in pushing this and keeping the story alive and pushing for the removal of that list. We hope now that the FCA will be transparent in their in the conduct of their business and really tell us how they were able to put the Cayman Islands as well as other countries on that list. They must tell us the various formulas that they use and their rationale, for that. We see some robberies in West Bay as well, shooting incidents in West Bay. But all in all, I trust that you had a great weekend as well. I want to remind you that For the Record is brought to you by Champion House Restaurant 2 and Champion House Cafe. Champion House Restaurant 2 is located on Eastern Avenue and Champion House Cafe on 1 Butterfield Place, which is formerly Comart Supermarket. Champion House, of course, is a family-oriented restaurant where locals and others dine. And today, of course, is Monday, September 8th, 2014, and we're getting near to that time when we will observe. We won't use the word celebrate, but where we will observe the occurrence of Hurricane Ivan here in the Cayman Islands. And I have in the studio with me this morning the Deputy Governor, Honorable Franz Manderson, and the CEO or Director of HCMI, Mr. McClary Frederick. I think we expect to have other guests as well, and hopefully they will be along soon. But Mr. Manderson, Deputy Governor, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. Connor. Thank you for having us, and good morning to the Cayman Islands as well.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Frederick. and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC. Nice to be here. And good morning, Cayman.
Now, Hurricane Ivan was, I would say, a defining event in the Cayman Islands. In so many respects, Hurricane Ivan was a defining event. We saw, for instance, the status grants where we granted people, we allowed them to come in, to be a part of us. And in Hurricane Ivan, we saw the exact opposite, where people were leaving because of Hurricane Ivan. And those stalwarts who had nowhere else to go, this was home for them. You know, we stayed here, but are the more vulnerable in our society. Certainly, we were able to evacuate them either before or after the hurricane. But it certainly was a defining moment. Mr. Manderson, some remarks from you, please?
Yes, sir. I totally agree. It was a defining moment in our country's history. Growing up, we had all heard about the 1932 hurricane and how devastating that was. But I don't think any of us realized how bad it could be. And, once Hurricane Ivan had passed and we all went outside and saw the devastation, the catastrophic damage, I think it was a real frightening moment for so many of us, in that we had never seen that type of devastation. We had only heard about it, and while we were, the loss of life was extremely minimal due to the good work that had done in preparing the country for the hurricane. The damage to property was, as everybody knows, was overwhelming, and it was my early days as head of immigration. I had just took up the post in July. This was September, right. And so all of my good plans on what I wanted to do went haywire, and all our focus then was on doing what we could at the immigration department to ensure that the people who wanted to leave before and after the storm left, but to also then look carefully at how we allowed people to come in after the storm, so that we could start our rebuilding efforts. So I mean, it was a time for challenge, but it was also an opportunity for us to show what we can do as a people in terms of coming together, working for the betterment of our country. And I was very proud on the way in which the country, the civil service, my staff at immigration, all responded in rising to that challenge. And doing what was necessary to get us to where we are now, in terms of our recovery efforts were so quickly done, so very well done. And when I tell the story about Hurricane Ivan, people are amazed as to how quickly we were able to rebound as a country.
And Mr. Frederick, you, of course, your background and an area that you worked in, the planning department, building control unit. You would have, of course, recognized the difference and the approach, the new approach taken before Hurricane Ivan in terms of planning and the way that we build structures, where we build them, and the response after Hurricane Ivan as well. Of course, I must say that the robustness of the structures in the Cayman Islands, I don't think I've ever come into question in terms of their ability to withstand weather and everything else. But can you talk briefly about that?
I think one of the things that surprised everyone about Hurricane Ivan was the storm surge. While we had ensured that buildings were built to withstand the wind, we kind of lagged behind on making preparations for a storm surge and building to resist storm surge. When we had engineers and others come in to do assessments afterwards, one of the things that they were surprised at was that with the category storm that we actually had very little in terms of wind damage to buildings that were built after we enacted the code. Most of the damage was done to buildings that were built before the code. The thing that surprised everyone was the amount of damage that was caused by the storm surge. Unfortunately, I don't think I think the memories of Ivan has faded a bit. and we're still building close to the sea. We're still building on sea level, and unfortunately, if you have another Ivan event, we're going to see some of the same damages that was caused by storm surge.
Yeah, there was some reluctance, I think, afterwards. Even those homes that were near the water, you saw some reluctance to rebuild those homes. And then all of a sudden, we started to see those structures being built in the same places again, maybe some being built up higher, but they're still exposed. And, we always pride ourselves in talking about Caymanians and knowing the value of beach land, but also knowing that wasn't a place that you really wanted to build your residential structure, especially in the 40s, 50s, 60s. You simply didn't want to do that. So, you found most Caymanians never built near the water. Mm-hmm. That is changing now with the affluence and everything else. Everyone, it's not restricted to foreigners anymore wanting to live on the beach. Everyone basically wants to live on the beach. So we did see that increase afterwards. And like you said, I think that we're becoming more and more complacent. Now, there are other issues that we have to deal with, and we won't talk with them about them on this show. That's a story for a different time. But global warming and rising tides, rising water. We see in the Newlands area where that is happening now. Whether or not it can be attributed to global warming, we're not sure, but it's something that we have to listen to and we have to take into consideration.
That is one of the issues that as part of disaster management that we need to consider is global warming and the effects of global warming on our environment. And we need to address those as we go forward in legislation. We need to require homes that are built along the coastline, say within 1,500 feet of the coastline, to be elevated. And these are things that we need to step up and we need to do to protect not just the environment, but to protect our properties. The more we allowed to build on the coastline right at sea level, the more will be damaged in the event of any event such as a hurricane or even the sea level rise.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Manderson, we all have our unique stories about Hurricane Ivan and where we were, what we were doing, what we did to mitigate before the hurricane and what we had to do when we realized the extent of it, and all of us became vulnerable and susceptible to some effect of Hurricane Ivan. Now, the Hurricane Ivan hit on September 12th, 2004, which was on a Sunday. What are your recollections and your unique story that you have?
Yes. There's so many stories, but I remember, first of all, I was involved in the evacuation at our airport to ensure that everyone who wanted to leave was able to leave, and I think we had about 5,000 people who actually left before the storm hit. And in relation to my family, my grandfather said to me, "Franz, I want you to build your house where my house is built now." He said, "If you build your house there, you're going to be safe. You won't get any storm surge, and it's a really solid piece of land." So I said, "Okay, sir," and I built my house there, but it's a single story, and my mother lives a few hundred yards away, or more, maybe a bit more than that, and she lives in a two-story house. And she said, "Franz, why don't you and your family come over and be at my house? It's safer. We have the upstairs. We're far away from the sea." But I said, "No, I want to stay home." So both my sister, who lived across the street from myself, we all decided to stay home. But we said we didn't want our mom to be alone, so we sent our two sons up to stay with her in the house to sort of to protect her, because we felt that she was by far in the safest location in terms of far away from the sea, and also in a two-story home. Well, as it turns out, she texted us, I think maybe around about 5 o'clock in the morning to say that some of her shingles had blew off and some water was starting to come into her home. We didn't get alarmed because she has 2 floors. All this, everything seemed to be fine. And then she texted us around about 8 o'clock or before to say that water was coming into our home. So we started to get alarmed, and we said, oh my goodness, maybe we made a bad decision. But she said, don't worry, the children are fine. We're okay. And then the last text that I got from her was right when the storm was going to be passing closer to us, I think around about 8:30, was that water had actually come into the first floor, and they were standing on the couch. And I didn't hear anything more from them. I think we lost communication. And of course, we were all very, very worried about what was happening at my mom's house. My house was doing very well. There was no damage. My grandfather was right. There was no storm surge. Everything was fine. And I think around about 8:45 or 9 o'clock, I sent my daughter into my son's room to get something, and she came back and she said, Dad, I looked up in Fran's junior room and I can actually see outside. So I said, okay, that's the problem. So when I go in there, I look up, and through the lights, the light panel, I could see the sun or the outside, and I realized that piece of my roof had gone. So then I could hear the wind getting into my roof, and I was really worried that my roof was going to blow off, but thankfully it didn't. And I got significant damage to one part of my roof structure, and that I haven't took that away. And when we finally got to my mother's house later on that evening, they were fine, but she lives on Reverend Blackman Road in West Bay. There were fish in front of her in her house. I mean, in her yard, and you can how far away that is from the North Sound. But as Mr. Frederick said, the storm surge was so significant that it had moved fish from out of the North Sound onto Reverend Blackman Road, which is a couple of miles away. So that really drove home to me the importance of knowing and educating yourself about storm surge and how to mitigate against that, as well as Mr. Frederick said, in terms of elevating your homes and different things, preparing it. But I think in terms of, so personally, that was my sort of story at home. Going to work then the next day, and seeing, first of all, the immigration headquarters had actually done very well. There was no significant damage there. But preparing then as to what we were going to do in terms of getting people off the island. Cayman Airways made the decision to have free flights, but we knew that people were turning up at the airport with passports that were destroyed, that were wet, that they had they had all their belongings in a foster's bag, after living here for many years. And I was able to call the U.S. immigration in Miami and talk to some people there that I knew, and explain to them the devastation that we had encountered, and that we had so many non-nationals who just simply wanted to leave and go home. And the arrangements that we made and the agreement that they made, which actually saved us, I think, in terms of getting people off the island, was that they said, France, do not send us anyone with no documents at all, and don't send us any criminals. So that was a real big win for us, because everybody had something, whether it was a photocopy of their passport, whether it was a driver's license, whether it was a work permit ID, somebody had mostly everybody had saved something. And we were able to get another 5,000 people off the island who wanted to leave immediately after the hurricane.
And a lot of them were U.S. residents as well.
A lot of them were
U.S.,
some were Canadian, and then we had people from all over Europe and everywhere that wanted to transit through the United States. So we were able to get those people off. We were operating from the Cayman Airways hangar for a couple of days. The airport was not we weren't able to use the airport. So getting those people off in the first week or so after the hurricane, I think, was tremendous, and that released some of the pressures on our local resources here.
Okay, we're going to take a break to hear from our sponsors, and I want to also remind our listening audience that we have a new sponsor on board for the record, and that is the Auto Spa. Of course, the Auto Spa has 2 locations, one on Godfrey Nixon Way and one in the Prospect area, almost opposite the Red Bay Primary School, and we'll be giving you more details, on them. And we also, of course, we have Champion House Restaurant 2 and Champion House Cafe, who are also our sponsors. We're going to take a break to hear from them at this point in time, and we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Orrit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning is the Deputy Governor, Honorable Frans Manderson, and the Director of HMCI, Mr. McClure Frederick. We're here discussing Hurricane Ivan and the anniversary of Hurricane Ivan. There are several events that will be taking place this week, and we will be talking about those as well. I'm told that we have one caller online, and we have about 4 minutes before the news break, so we're going to take that caller at this point. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, O.C.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, painful but still thankful.
Good.
And good morning to Mr. Frederick.
Good morning.
And to my cousin, Franz, the Honorable Frans Manderson.
Good morning, Mom. How are you?
Painful and thankful.
Painful and thankful. I hope you feel better, Mom.
But listen, Franz, I had a laugh when I heard you change your mommy
Yes.
street name. You changed your mommy's street name, though.
I did?
Yeah, you said Reverend Blackman. That's where you and your sister and her first home was there.
Okay.
Is there. But she's on Pablo. No, not Pablo.
Reverend Blackman.
No, she is on Willow Franklin Drive.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, my mother's on Willow Fountain Drive, yes, okay. Yeah, if I said Reverend Blackman, that's where I am, yes.
But listen now, and I mean to embarrass you, but I want to also make you know that I am the cousin that she say is the cassava cake expert.
Okay.
All right?
Yes, Mom.
So you all have a good day.
Okay, thank you, Mom.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for that caller. We have about 2 minutes, but we can start to talk about HMCI and Mr. Frederick. At the time when Hurricane Ivan hit, we had what we call a hurricane committee, and there was an executive of the hurricane committee that was headed up by the then Deputy Governor, Mr. Donovan Ebanks. Since then, we have now formally established HMCI, and you're the director.
As a result of Hurricane Ivan, I mentioned earlier about the preparedness. I think everybody realized that we needed to do a bit more than just preparedness, which we did a good job for Hurricane Ivan. So the government at the time decided to set up a agency to manage preparedness, not just for hurricanes, but to expand that to cover all of the events, because remember in December we had a strong earthquake, and I think coming after Hurricane Ivan, it kind of pushed the idea of setting up an agency that would manage, because prior to HMCI, we had a hurricane committee that was made up of individuals, departments, and it was coordinated through the fire department, and it really functioned whenever a storm was approaching us, but we didn't have much efforts being made in terms of preparedness outside of those events. So it was felt that we needed to do more in terms of preparedness before or response and recovery from any event, whether hurricane or otherwise.
Okay, we're at the 8 o'clock hour, and we have to go to a news break at this point in time. I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Orrit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning, are the Deputy Governor, Honorable Franz Manderson, and Mr. McClure Frederick, the Director of HMCI. Please stay tuned. We will be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Orrit Connor, and my guests in the studio with me this morning discussing the anniversary of Hurricane Ivan, the upcoming anniversary of Hurricane Ivan. My guests are Mr. Franz Manderson, Honorable Deputy Governor, and Mr. McClure Frederick, the Director of HMCI. Before I go to a caller that we have online, I just want to give a special shout out, a belated happy birthday to a lady in West Bay, very special lady who is known as Aunt Faith. She's affectionately known to family and friends as Aunt Faith, and she had a birthday yesterday. Aunt Faith is also the mother of the Honorable W. McKeever Bush, the leader of the opposition. So we just want to give a belated happy birthday to Aunt Faith as well. I'm told that we have one caller online, so we're going to take that caller now. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, O.C.
Good morning, the devil himself. Tell me, was Hurricane Ivan named after you?
I don't think they named everyone after me. Good morning, Honorable Mr. Manson.
Good morning, sir.
And Mr. Frederick.
Morning.
Okay. I had a experience too. I was living out of Henning Lane then, 29 Henning Lane. And I would say the area was low. And I had 5 foot of salt water in my yard. It didn't come from south. It came from the north sound. Came on Cromwell Fire Drive and ended up there. And it kept coming in the house. Got up on the dining room table and kept going. My wife, she got a ladder for me going to the ceiling with a hatchet. I said, no, I'm not going up there. So I got out there. What I'm getting at now, if they open up that north sound, that channel there, you don't need Hurricane Ivan. I believe if you have a good northeaster, water can be coming on the side. That's my feeling. So that channel, you got to be careful opening that up. And thanks this morning for just saying Hurricane Ivan, not just saying Ivan, because I'm catching a lot of hell. Church services, political meetings, high-powered meetings. I went to one about 2 weeks ago, and they were dealing with insurance and monies and everything. And it came up that Ivan had carried with something. And everyone started looking at me. I say, I point of order, would you please put a hand to that name? Yeah. Could you say Hurricane Ivan?
Yes, sir.
So when it talks about Hurricane Ivan, I appreciate if they say Hurricane Ivan, not just saying Ivan. And I'm praying that we don't get anything like that again.
Yes, sir.
And I want to say happy birthday to Miss Faith.
Okay.
And you all have a blessed day. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, Mr. Ivan, and we hope to be talking on Friday.
Okay, that'd be good.
Great, great. For those of you in our listening audience who are unfamiliar with the events of Hurricane Ivan, or those of you who may have simply forgotten, just want to remind you that Hurricane Ivan made its way to the Cayman Islands on Sunday, the 12th of September, and the eye is reported to have passed 21 miles southwest of Grand Cayman with winds of 150 miles per hour and gusts of 220 miles per hour. Now, Mr. Frederick, those figures were always a bone of contention because there was always the argument: did we get the correct figures as far as the wind speed and the distance. Some people said, for instance, that it seemed as if the eye of Hurricane Ivan crossed right over the Cayman Islands. Now, I know that there have been several hurricane conferences since then, and this was discussed. What is the status of it now? Do we have settled figures in terms of the intensity of Hurricane Ivan?
Well, immediately after there was this discussion of whether or not we got a Category 4 or a Category 5. And I remember Fred Sambula saying it really doesn't matter whether it's 4 or 5, we got a devastating hurricane. There has been some review of historical storms, and one of those were Hurricane Ivan by the National Hurricane Center in Florida. And I started to read the report a couple of days ago, and it basically says that Hurricane Ivan was a Category 4 storm just below the Category 5 threshold, which means that, like Mr. Manderson said, it could be worse. So the winds would have to be just a bit below 155. I think they estimated it at 154. The gusts is hard to measure because most of the instruments that was used to measure those got damaged. So we're relying on some outliers and some other private instruments to get those readings from. Whatever the gust was, all I know is I lost part of my roof and there was hardly any trees left standing. So while we're debating whether it's a 4 or 5, we shouldn't lose fact that it was a devastating hurricane, and it could have been worse. So the storm surge that we had, the winds that we had, if use that as a marker. If you were at home and you got flooded, and a Category 4 or 5 hurricane is coming, you're probably going to get flooded again. And if it comes from a different direction, the effect might be different, and it would be different. We were fortunate that the storm passed to the south of us. What if it went direct over us? By the storm being so close to us, we actually got the higher gust winds because the eye wall is where most of the high winds are located. So with the storm being that close to us, we were in the eye wall. It didn't pass over us because I don't remember there being any relief with the eye passing over us. But it was, I think the worst was that we were on the northern quadrant of the storm in the eye wall, and it was moving really slow, and that's what really beat us apart. Was that it had slowed down when it got to us and continued to move slow. So we really took a beating.
And of course, not many of us, and certainly not me, but would have experienced the 1932 storm, and what the comparisons to that. We've heard people talk about it. If there's anyone out there who had any experience with the 1932 storm, we would certainly be more than happy to hear from them and to be able to tell us the difference. Of course, I think Cayman Brac was certainly more influenced and damaged by the 1932 storm than probably Grand Cayman was.
Well, I was actually at home in East End, and my house is about 21 feet above sea level. And fortunately, I had my grandparents with me. They lived next door, so we took them out of their house to come stay with me. And they both were in the 1932 storm. And they were sitting in front of my house looking out the window and watching the trees disappear and watching the storm surge. And my grandfather started talking about his experience in the 1932 storm, because he lived almost where my house is now, is where their house was in 1932. And he was talking about how high the water came and where the water came to, and how bad this storm was compared to the 1932 storm. And my grandmother, she's sitting there with him listening and rolling her eyes. And she said, if you don't stop talking about the 1932 storm, I'm going to slap you, because this storm is much worse than the 1932 storm. And he was talking about the level the water came. And while, the funny thing was, while he was there talking about that, we've heard people talking about the big wave coming through. Well, I actually was looking out my front window when the wave came in, and it came up to my house, and he was telling me that that's where the water came in 1932, and my yard is built up a little bit higher than the neighbor next door, and it ran past my house up further up the neighbor's house, and when I saw the wave came in and saw the height that the water was, and I started to say to myself, "Oh my Lord, we got some people in trouble," because I've seen the water come up to the road, splash over the road, in Hurricane Gilbert and Allen, but I'd never seen it come over the road, and to be up that high, and he was there watching and go, "Yep, this is exactly what happened. The wave came in, it was up here, and." So in some senses, he was able to witness what Ivan had done and Hurricane Ivan did, and the 1932 storm, and they were, in his experience, similar.
Great. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Auret Connor. My guests in the studio with me this morning are Honorable Franz Madison, Deputy Governor, and Mr. McClary Frederick, the Director of HMCI. And we're discussing the anniversary of Hurricane Ivan, which hit on the Cayman Islands on September 12th, 2004. I want to remind you that you can call us. Our phone lines are open. We have a toll-free number, which is 1-800-534-8255. Also, 949-8037 and 949-6990. And you can also email us at fortherecord, one word, fortherecord, at candw.ky. If you have memories of Hurricane Ivan, experiences that you want to share with us, observations and advice, please feel free to call us. I'm told that we have one caller online, so we're going to take that caller now. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. Connor.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
Good morning to the Honorable Franz Madison and, of course, Mr. Frederick.
Good morning, ma'am.
I'd like to mention right off here that on the 12th of September, my dad's birthday, he refused to go to the shelter at that time because, of course, his house was fairly new and well built. Before I go any further, let me say that my father, Mr. Frederick, he always referred to him as one of his best shipmates. They were very close friends. And also Mr. Manderson, Mr. Jacob Manderson, your grandfather,
Yes,
was
ma'am.
also one of my dad's best friends.
Okay.
And whenever he referred to his friends, it wasn't just a passing thing. He always mentioned the fact that these people were very close to him, even because he was sharp mind, even right up until the 99 and 6 months that he lived. But anyway, back to Hurricane Ivan. Thank God we got him through that and finally had him in the was able to put him in the shelter, John Cumber, and then afterwards we moved him to the hotel. Where now the new hotel is being built. That was and the condition of it was such that we could put him there. But anyway, on the eve of Ivan, my children and I had hoped to get together, and we had our plans. We had everything in place. We were fortunate to live on one of the highest points in West Bay, and the two sisters' houses right together. And so anyway, afterwards, my youngest daughter, who's forever scared of tsunamis, she said, no, we're still not that far from the ocean. So anyway, but they decided that later on that they would move to another house. And I checked on a neighbor of mine, Miss Ardis Smith, and earlier she had told me that a friend of hers was coming over, and so, she was there talking with her. They seemed and calm, and we knew what we were expecting and so on. But her house was built like a fortress, so I wasn't too worried about her. So I thought, well, these two ladies will make it. later on, I checked on her again, and she said, "Well, I'm here, me and my Lord, and waiting to see what's happening." So I said, "So where's your friend? Where's Moni?" And she said, "Oh no, Moni was only here because she came to bring me a cell phone." So I said, "Are you telling me you're going through this hurricane by yourself?" She said, "Well, that's what it looks like." So I spoke to my daughters. They all agreed that all of us wouldn't go there, but if I wanted to go, they would very, very reluctantly give me permission. So that was decided upon, and I went to be with this lady. We were there. One of the observations that I can tell you, this lady did not only have very strong, a strong, well-built house, windows and doors, very, nothing cheap at all. But she also had hurricane shutters. But that when that storm was passing, what I found, gentlemen, was her doors were doors that when you opened it, it opened to the inside. And at that point in time, we had to put the sofa on as much as we could get against those double doors, which were also covered with hurricane shutters. And the doors were still, it seemed like they were going to force them, the wind was going to force the doors in. So I was there and I was saying, well, if this happens, we're gone. Because if the wind gets inside this house at this velocity, we're gone. And so anyway, we prayed, we sang, we just trusted ourselves to God. But one of the things I observed was that the doors should have been built, or should have been, the house should have been constructed where the doors, you had to pull them from the outside, because if the wind had been coming against the doors and they were being shut from the outside, it would have been much easier. We were lucky that she had the hurricane shutters because the doors were still moving. That's really what was happening. But the other observation was unknown to me. My youngest daughter, again in panic about tsunamis, they moved to a second house. So that was further in the central West Bay area. And everything seemed fine. Brand new house that was built. And I think it was 12 of them in there. And suddenly the water started coming in and so on. But before you know it, they didn't know what to do because they had children and everything. And then my grandson, Rico, or at Ibanks, he said, well, someone said we need to get on the ceiling. They said, but we have no ladder, we have nothing. How do you get there? So he came up with the idea, why don't you put somebody on the dining room table and then try to get them up, and then we can pull the others. Well, long story short, that's exactly what they did, and we're all up there. But being inside that roof, what they experienced was that they thought that the roof would come off at any time. They were in there for like 12 hours, I believe it was, before they were able to get down, these 12 people in the ceiling. So it was quite an experience. I didn't know it at the time. Our cell phones, we of course, we lost power after a while. And so I didn't know what they were going through. But two observations was, in addition to, like everyone else, being extremely...
Caller, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up for us because we have another caller online.
But the way doors are built and the impact that it can have on a house if it's not so that it's pushed from the outside. And I thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we're going to have, after we take the next caller, we're going to have Mr. Frederick address some of the issues that the caller just talked about because, like I said earlier in their introduction, he was in charge of the building control unit in the planning department at one point in time. So he has lots of experience and expertise in that area as well. So we'll take the next caller first. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, sir. Good morning to all those who are in the studio.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mom. How are you?
I am doing very well, thanks. How are you doing?
Excellent, Mom.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good. Yes. Great. I had the privilege to watch just a portion. Unfortunately, I didn't see all, but a section of the documentary last night from GIS. I found that it was very revealing the recounts of the Hurricane Ivan. It was very interesting to hear other people's stories. We can only thank God for saving us through this, because under other circumstances, many more people would have died.
Certainly.
Yeah, so we thank God for that. But I was impressed with, though I like all the stories, I was impressed with the guy who said that he drove the bus to rescue those who were stranded at Bordentown.
Mm-hmm.
That
was at the Civic Center. Yeah, yes.
At the Civic Center. That was the human deed, and also the lady who from the Red Cross, volunteer from the Red Cross, said that the ambulance didn't have access to the center, so she had to stitch a gash that was over a guy's eye and kind of settle him. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, so I don't know if you can, if you know what I'm talking about. But when you get a chance to see it, you know what I mean. If you haven't.
No, we haven't. I haven't seen it yet, but certainly will be looking at it.
Okay, but all of the stories are interesting. But I was wondering if these two, if there was any recognition for, because actually they risked their lives. A lot of people risked their lives, but these two in particular. I mentioned these two because these are the two that were highlighted.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
To the guy, he said he didn't have bus license, and he radioed in to find out if he could have taken the bus, and they told him, well, you do it we are not going to give you permission, you do it at your own risk. So he actually saved the lives of many people by taking that bus
mm-hmm.
and going to collect those people.
Yeah,
so,
in a situation like that, you do what you have to do, you know.
Correct. So I don't know if he got some recognition for that. Probably he wouldn't want any, because anyone under those circumstances would do it, not for recognition, but to save others.
Yeah, and if he didn't, he's getting it from you now, which is good as well. So I hope he's listening.
Correct. And the guy also, the lady from the Red Cross, I was really impressed. I couldn't have done that,
mm-hmm.
but she did.
Yeah.
So she should be applauded.
There were many heroes that emerged from Hurricane Ivan, and like you said, some were recognized, maybe some weren't, and maybe some don't want the recognition because they would say this is something that I would do, you know, in everyday life. But yes.
With you. I thoroughly agree with you. But as I said, I was impressed with those two in particular. But it was an experience. I have never gone through a hurricane before. That was my first time, and to be honest with you, and it is an experience I would never like to repeat.
Okay.
It was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, caller. And we're going to be discussing, you know, that as well in terms of how people now react whenever there's a approaching hurricane. You know, how people react to it now as before, when we were extremely complacent and everyone waited until the last minute, and how we need to heed the warnings of our disaster management personnel when they tell us that a hurricane is approaching.
Who were wishing for it to come, and I need some excitement. I would like some excitement, but they did not know what they were talking about, and I'm sure on reflection they're sorry that they said it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, caller, very much for that, and I hope you continue to listen to For the Record.
I have to go to work now, so I won't
I tell your boss, let you put your headphones in, and you can listen to it if you're working at a desk or something and not dealing, you know, with the general public. I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record, folks, that my guests in the studio with me this morning, we have the Honorable Franz Manderson, Deputy Governor, and Mr. McClure Frederick, the Director of HMCI, and we're discussing the upcoming anniversary of Hurricane Ivan, the events that are due to take place, and we're discussing the Hurricane Ivan itself, the event and what happened, and we want to hear from you. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back shortly. Please stay tuned. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Oric Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning is the Honorable Franz Manderson, the Deputy Governor, but he's not only here in his capacity as Deputy Governor, but also as the Chair of the National Hazard Management Council. And we also have the Director of HMCI, Hazard Management Cayman Islands, Mr. McCleary Frederick. I want to remind you that our phone lines are open. Toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. And you can also email us at fortherecord@candw.ky. I also want to remind you that For the Record is brought to you by the Auto Spa with 2 locations, one on Godfrey Nixon Way and one in the Prospect area opposite the Red Bay Primary School. I also want to remind you that For the Record is also brought to you by Champion House Restaurant 2 and Champion House Cafe. Champion House Restaurant 2 is located on Eastern Avenue, and Champion House Cafe at 1 Butterfield Place, formerly Comart. Champion House, of course, is a family-oriented restaurant where locals and others dine. And we also want to mention Paradise Coffee. They are also sponsors as well, and they have also given us the benefit of a Keurig coffee and tea machine, which serves the purpose for our guests as well as our staff here in Radio Cayman. We're of course, discussing the upcoming anniversary of Hurricane Ivan. And, gentlemen, the 3 most affected districts were Georgetown, Bordentown, and East End, and those districts at that time accounted for 75% of the total population of Grand Cayman. We had recorded 2 fatalities during Hurricane Ivan. I think there was one person who opted to try to weather the storm out in their boat, and someone who may have been killed by falling debris in one of the buildings, I believe. But other than that, there was no other loss of life, despite the fact that on the international scene and even locally, there were rumors about hundreds of people being killed. We know there was a housing development on the Spots area that had been totally swept off its foundation, but all of the occupants there had been evacuated before that and had moved to a shelter as well. But what I want to talk about now is that there are always competing interests before, during, and after a hurricane. And Mr. Manderson, before the hurricane is approaching, we have the tourism industry who was interested in securing their area, wanting to ensure that their guests were secured and everything. But because of the approach that we had previously taken in relation to hurricanes, there was this debate whether or not we should have people continue to come in, tourists continue to come in. What should we do about those who are here? Should we have them leave? There were concerns about the fact that they'd paid for vacations. Of course, all of those concerns should have been secondary to the safety, of our guests. What can you recall the experiences with that, and what have we learned from that, and what do we do differently now?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I think we learned a lot of lessons there. I remember when we were doing the evacuations, we found before Hurricane Ivan that there were still some people wanting to come into the island to visit. So a decision was made then to stop tourists from coming in, because, as you said, we want to do a number of things. We want to keep everyone here safe. We have a finite number of shelter spaces, so we want to make sure that everyone who needs to go to a shelter can go. And obviously, if there's less people on the island, then there's less people competing for those shelter spaces. So it's important for us to educate the public, for the hotel owners, people in the tourism industry, to give their guests the very best advice they can, based on what we're telling them as the Hazard Management Council, but also to ensure that everyone is safe. That has to be the paramount consideration. So if, for example, there's a Category 4, Category 5 hurricane coming, anything that we believe is going to be cause significant damage or can represent a loss of life, we will then have to make decisions about stopping people from actually coming onto the island at an early stage, so that we can get people off and for people to be able to concentrate on who's here and not have to worry about new people coming in. Also, there's a lot of business continuity that has to occur as well, and you'll see a number of businesses here flying their staff overseas to make sure that their business continuity plans are in place and they're working, and also in government as well. We have to ensure that we're able to react quickly after the storm in terms of the essential services. So a lot of planning has gone into that. I want to commend Mr. Frederick and his team for pushing contingency plans across government to make sure that that we can respond very quickly after the hurricane. During the hurricane, is not much that we can do because it's just so dangerous to go outside. But certainly immediately after, once the all clear is given, then we as a government needs to be able to spring into action and respond to what has happened.
And I know that the National Hazard Management Council relies heavily on the information that they obtain from the Immigration Department in terms of the tourism numbers. And as a former chief immigration officer, can you tell our listening audience how the Immigration Department is equipped to be able to pass that information on to the authorities?
Yes, I mean, because of the good work that you did while you were there as head of immigration in terms of computer systems, we have immigration has a excellent computer system, and basically within a few minutes they can tell us exactly how many people are on island in terms of tourists. They can give us printouts as where people are staying. Because we in addition to having people at hotels, we have people at guest houses, people visiting friends and families. They can give us nationalities. So we are very blessed that we have that type of information available at our fingertips, that we can say, okay, we have 5,000 tourists on island, and majority of them are at the hotel. So we would expect 3,500, 4,000 of them to actually leave from the hotels. So we're blessed to have that type of technology available, and then we can make decisions using correct data, because you don't want to be making decisions on basically guessing on what you're relying on. So we're very fortunate to have that information.
Okay, Mr. Frederick, let's talk about the availability of shelter space and also our enhanced ability to be able to forecast weather conditions based on the new Doppler radar that we have.
Well, our shelter space that we have throughout the island is only enough to accommodate about 10% of the population. Some districts a little bit more, some a little bit less. On average, it's about 10% of the population. And one of the groups that we don't want to forget are the people that are here on work permit. And that is other good information that we'll get from immigration as to the nationals that are on island on work permit, to be able to advise the councils so that they know who they have to deal with, and also gives us a better idea of who might be coming into the shelters. So we have shelters throughout all of the districts. We just added the shelter at the Clifton Hunter School, which can accommodate upwards of 350 people. But every district has shelters. We have signs up on the roads that will direct you to the shelters. So if you're in a housing or in an area that you don't feel comfortable, seek out a shelter. You can go on our website, www.caymanprepared.ky, and also get the locations of the shelters. Before I go on, I want to go back to the caller that was talking about her doors.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah. Thanks for that, yeah.
And she has a good point. It's something that we don't think about a lot of times when we're doing construction. And because residential homes are exempt from a lot of the requirements, if it's a commercial building, the door would have to swing outwards because it would have to swing in the direction of the flow of traffic in terms of emergency egress. But if you think about a home, if you have your door swinging on the outside, it's harder for somebody to kick in the door. If it's swinging on the outside, because you have the door stops and whatnot that would stop it from swinging in. It's much more difficult to pull the door open than it is to kick it in if it's swinging on the inside. It's more difficult to pick a lock or to jimmy the lock if the door is swinging on the outside. Or it's more accessible, but you can't. When it comes to hurricanes, because the pressure is on the outside of the door pushing in, and you have the door stops on the inside, it would prevent that door from coming in. On the other hand, if the door is swinging in, the only thing that is holding it in place is the lock. Mm-hmm. And if you look at your door and your door stop and see how the lock is in, there's only about 1/4 inch or 3/4 of an inch of wood or material that is keeping your door in place. So imagine 150 miles an hour wind, about 53 pounds per square foot pushing on your door. It wouldn't take long to push it in. So it's very important. I made a conscious decision when I was doing my house that all of my doors swing out, including the one going into the garage, for that specific reason that in the event of a hurricane, the pressure is pushing the door against the door frame rather than against the lock.
And can you speak about our enhanced ability now to do better weather forecasting? I know we should have probably Fred here or not Mr. Tibbetts now, but I'm sure that they will be on another show talking about that as well. But you're familiar with it.
Yeah, I am, and I've hung around Fred and John long enough. I feel I'm a bit of a weatherman myself. The European Union funded through CMO a weather radar. It is built in East End, and the images from the weather radar are on weather.gov.ky. And that gives us the ability to really look at a hurricane that is approaching us and see what is coming and anticipate what we're going to get. It also serves the U.S. quite well because it kind of fills a gap between Jamaica and Belize that existed, where they didn't get good information. But for us, it gives us a lot better information on the winds, the intensity of the rain, the direction, speed, and would be able to give us better information to make decisions. Before that, we were relying on information from other sources, satellites, but this is real information that we can get and analyze and be able to provide the council and the policy group in the NEOC with good information.
And we've seen just, I think it was last week, week before last, that the announcement of a special app that was developed, for people to get real-time information in terms of weather conditions as well.
Yeah, there's an app that was developed by the National Weather Service and as part of the project, and it's available for I think all of the devices, Apple, Androids, that you will be able to get real-time radar images and weather information. It's a new app, and I'm sure we're going to make some improvements as we go along. But it is available, and it will give you the real-time weather images on your iPhone, iPad, any of your mobile devices.
Okay. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning, we have the Honorable Franz Manderson, Deputy Governor and the Chairman of the National Hazard Management Council. We also have the Director of Hazard Management, Cayman Islands, Mr. McCleary Frederick, and we are here discussing the upcoming anniversary of Hurricane Ivan. We have about 2 minutes before we go to a short news break again. But in the meantime, Mr. Manderson, the total economic impact to the Cayman Islands was estimated by ECLAC, which is the Economic Council, I believe it is, for Latin America and the Caribbean. And it was estimated to be at $3.4 billion, which was 183% of our gross domestic product. Approximately 83%, or 13,535 units of the total housing stock in the Cayman Islands, suffered some degree of damage. Dwellings which were situated on the seashore, in low-lying areas, or swampy areas suffered the most severe damage. Older and less well-constructed housing was also affected. We saw where the collection and retention of data made it difficult for us to get that estimate, and we know that the ECLAC people, when they were on the ground here, had some difficulty, with that. How has government now enhanced its ability to collect data and to have that there? I know the ESO does a tremendous job in collecting statistics. Sometimes it's difficult because people don't want to give the information that we need to get, because everyone is suspicious. Oh, you want to get this information from me because you want to impose direct taxes in the Cayman Islands. But how has government improved in that area?
I think we've done a very good job in that area in terms of, first of all, lessons learned from Ivan in terms of what we're going to need to what kind of information we need to provide. So I think we've done a good job now as to focusing on that and making sure that we have that information available and that we are collecting it through the various sources, both in terms of planning with their housing, and then in relation to all of the other things that, like you said, the ESO does. So I think we are in a much better position now that if we were going to be able or if we were required to provide that type of information again, that we'd be in a much better position to provide it. I think it is something that it was new to us at the time. A lot of lessons had to be learned, but I think we've learned them, and we are now in a much stronger position to provide the information. I don't know whether Mr. Frederick want to add to that or not.
Before we go to that, we're going to just go to the news headlines, which is going to be for a short period, and we're going to be right back after that. So, folks, please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Orrit Connor, and my guests in the studio with me this morning, we have the Honorable Frans Manderson, Deputy Governor and Chairman of the National Hazard Management Council, and the Director of HMCI Hazard Management Cayman Islands, Mr. McClure Frederick. Before we went to the news headlines, we were talking about ECLAC, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, and their estimate of the damage inflicted by Hurricane Ivan on the Cayman Islands. And we were going to invite Mr. Frederick to comment some more on that.
As council, one of the things that we did to help us with collecting that data and having it as comprehensive as possible, we restructured the damage assessment to economic assessment subcommittee that is headed up by ESO. So the Economic and Statistics Office heads up that group, and we've included other entities that would provide us with the information that we need, such as Lands and Survey, the Planning Department. We're planning to include the assessment unit from Children and Family Services that would provide us with all of that information, because they're on their own have good information, planning, Lands and Survey. ESO, like you mentioned, have been doing surveys and so on. So we feel that, and also we included the Chamber of Commerce on that committee. So, we think we have a good group that would be able to provide a comprehensive damage assessment report in the event that there's a need to do so.
Okay, we talk about the lessons learned from Hurricane Ivan, and this is probably a topic more for discussion with the politicians, but we need to talk about it anyway. We saw, for instance, that after Hurricane Ivan, because there were no budgetary allocations, no preparations in relation to having a disaster fund per se. We have the environmental fund, but we didn't have a disaster fund at that point in time. That all government agencies, all departments, ministries, portfolios were directed to use their current budget to address issues relating to Hurricane Ivan. And we basically saw what happened as a result of that in terms of our financial reporting and the inaccuracies of it. Again, a story for another time. But we saw that. But I don't believe that we still have a dedicated disaster management fund. And is it something that we should have? And is it something that is common internationally to have such a fund? We see the United States, and we can't compare ourselves to them, but they can declare an area a disaster area, and you see federal funds pouring in to that area. Do we have something similar, or should we have something similar in the Cayman Islands?
Yes, I mean, we should have, as you correctly said, we do have the Environmental Protection Fund that maybe we could tap into in terms of damage to the environment. But yes, I mean, I think that is something that we should have. I know the government is actively considering it. They're looking at other type of sinking funds to deal with debt and other issues. But our finances have not been at a place where we could deal with it a few years ago. No. Because of the rapid improvement of our financial position, I think in another year or so we should be able to give active consideration to doing things like this, because we see where we needed it in terms of Ivan and Paloma, and we cannot continue to ask departments to fund these type of things on their own and erode their existing budgets. So it's important for us to have it. It's I mean, you have to ask yourself, is it a luxury or is it a necessity? It is absolutely necessary, because we are in the what they call the hurricane belt. Mr. Frederick can correct me on that, and it's something that is going to happen again. It's just a matter of time. So we need to be prepared and have that type of resources available to us.
Anything you want to add to that, Mr. Frederick?
No, I think you got it covered.
Okay. Insurance. Let's talk about insurance. There were people who had nightmares, after Hurricane Ivan in terms of insurance settlements. We saw some scams taking place, for instance, and it took the insurance industry a while to wake up to that, especially with vehicles. There were, huge amounts of vehicles that were damaged by Hurricane Ivan, but we saw opportunists who took advantage of the situation and would throw some sand and some water inside their cars and say that damaged. They were then paid off for their vehicle, turned around and bought the vehicle back from the insurance company, and vehicles driving perfectly. Like I said, it took the insurance company a while to wake up to that fact. But we see now insurance rates, home insurance rates, just sky high, really popping out of the roof in terms of what people are paying. Do we feel that the regulations that we have in place in relation to insurance companies now and people's understanding of what they're being insured for, because a lot of people were told that, oh, you're underinsured, the value of your house is such, but you've only insured it for so much. Any corrective measures that we're taking in that area, Mr. Frederick?
Well, I think a lot of people may find that they will still run into the issue of the underinsurance. I myself ran into that, and I thought I had adequately insured the house. But when they come and do your assessment, it's not just the house that you insure your entire property. So if you have a garage, if you have a fence, this all adds into the cost of your property insurance. It's not just house insurance; it's property insurance. So when you're doing your insurance, you have to make sure that the value includes the entire property. And I don't think that a lot of people take that into consideration. I know that the cost of insurance may cause some people to say, "Well, I'm just going to insure the house, and I'm only going to insure it for 75% of what it's worth." That in in the short run might save you some money, but in the event that you need to make a claim, it will actually cost you more. Um, in some of the Caribbean countries, they do offer discounts if your house is in certain locations, or if it's built to the code, or if it has hurricane shutters, and those type of things. But those have not been afforded to us, and it wasn't just because Hurricane Ivan affected us as to why our rates went up. Anything in the region will cause the rates to go up. Um, it's a small community, even though we're kind of spread out. But when you come think of it, storm coming through the Caribbean will affect insurance companies that are insuring here, even though it never affected us, but it will affect the company. So overall, you will have insurance rates that go up for that reason. But I think homeowners need to pay a bit more attention, and I know it's expensive, but they need to pay a bit more attention to what they're actually insuring, and you may run into the further incidents of underinsurance if we are affected again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Frederick. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning is the Honorable Frans Madison, Deputy Governor and the Chair of the National Hazard Management Council, and the Director of HMCI Hazard Management Cayman Islands, Mr. McClure Frederick. I also want to remind you that Record is brought to you by Champion House Restaurant 2 and Champion House Cafe. Champion House Restaurant 2 is located on Eastern Avenue, and Champion House Cafe at 1 Battlefield Place, formerly a Comart supermarket. Champion House is a family-oriented restaurant where locals and others dine. I also want to remind you that the Auto Spa has come on as a sponsor of For the Record as well. They're located on Godfrey Nixon Way, off Eastern Avenue, and also in the Red Bay area opposite the Red Bay Primary School. Also want to give a shout out to Paradise Coffee for their supply of a Keurig machine, which is a welcomed addition for our guests as well as our staff here at Radio Cayman. I'm told that we have one caller on the line, and we're going to take that caller in a second. But when we come back from that caller, we also want to talk, Mr. Madison, about the UK's role in rendering disaster assistance to the Cayman Islands, or experiences after Hurricane Ivan, and whether or not we have seen an improvement in their ability to respond since that. So we'll take the caller now. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning again, Mr. Devil.
I forgot, or not forgot, but I was anxious to get off there. I guess I was a chance. Insurance. Yeah, I paid on that house insurance for 31 years, and they didn't say I was overinsured or underinsured. That a company that supposed had gone under. But I didn't collect anything, but I didn't give them no heart attack. And I praying for them that they don't end up in a real hell.
Otherwise, you'll take care of them there, huh?
Yeah, what else I want to say now? But the Lord been good to me. The house got destroyed, but my shop held up. Lost one sheet of zinc, so water got in and lost some stock. A shop can build back a house, but a house can't build back a shop. So the Lord's still been good to me. And the old building, front of the old building is putting 100 years old. And lost one sheet of zinc.
Wow.
But
Old Cayman style built, right?
Most of the churches didn't fare off too good. Most of them got destroyed. So you all have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ivan, for that information as well. No caller on the line at this point. Okay, Mr. Manderson, we know that the United Kingdom maintains a presence in the Cayman Islands in the form of, I think, 2 vessels during the hurricane season. We saw after Hurricane Ivan the response. Many people were enthusiastic about the fact that there were vessels heading this way, but we know at the end of the day that there was very little assistance that they could render, maybe some logistical assistance and stuff like that. Of course, we also have to admit the fact that Grenada and other islands in the Eastern Caribbean had been hit before us, and whatever supplies they had at that point in time had already been delivered and assistance rendered to them. So by the time they got to us, there was really nothing. Can you tell us what the UK has done since then to enhance their ability to assist us after a disaster?
Yes, sir. There were lessons to be learned. And on both sides, I think, first of all, we have to have a clear understanding as to what their role is. I think when the ship arrived, we expected them to come off, the people to come off with their guns and guard Georgetown. And they said, listen, that is not our role. We're not going to get into internal security matters. That's a matter for your police. So I think we, first of all, have to get a very clear understanding as to what the UK's role is, and they do provide assistance in terms of personnel coming in normally before a storm to work with Mr. Frederick and his team in terms of the preparedness and response afterwards. They normally have someone who is versed in hurricanes that will come in and locate here in Cayman. But the ship that they have that is patrolling the Caribbean, they have, again, like you said, done some prioritizing to ensure that, yes, if there are other islands hit, there are resources available to us, and we have to then have a clear understanding as to what those resources are. So again, they will provide tarps and water purification tablets and help us with damage assessments. And if there's a helicopter on board, then they can also help to do a first assessment if our helicopter has to leave the island. And to provide first aid and different things like that they have. Some of them have hospitals on their ships and different things that they can provide, but they're not going to get involved in security, and they are not going to do more than what they can do, because their assistance is finite as well in terms of what they have on board. But I think we know. So once we understand that is what the role is, I think we'll be fine. We just had to have a very clear understanding as to what they can do, what they can't do, and then we will then know what we have to do to ensure that, for example, if there's damage to Georgetown in terms of our jeweler stores and things, that's an internal matter for us to sort out.
Yeah, I guess and we knew that there were several incidents of looting,
right.
And it was unfortunate that in some instances people were you don't condone looting at all, but if you're looting to get food,
right,
because you're hungry, that's one thing. But they were breaking into liquor stores and stuff
right.
like that.
That's right.
Yeah, there might have been a need to have a drink too, but
there were
things
that was not a good time
and
not a good moment for us as a people. But again, we learned from that, and I'm hoping now that people will not do that sort of thing. And like you said, everyone can understand if you're stealing some bread for your family. No one can understand if you are trying to steal liquor.
Yeah, and the optics of the United Kingdom having troops on the ground here just simply wouldn't look good for for them.
Exactly.
So that's why we never got that assistance.
Yes.
In that area as well. We have one more break. just a short break, and then we'll have about 10 minutes left of the show. Folks, please stay tuned to Radio Cayman for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. Mr. Frederick, before we took that short break, we were talking about the UK and its ability to respond and to render assistance to us after a natural disaster or any disaster.
Well, one of the things that has come out of this year's meeting of the Overseas Territories Disaster Managers in Miami is that there's only one ship in the territory this year. And it'll be visiting us in October. I think it's late October it'll come here. But they're limited, like Mr. Manson said, in their resources. They will come in and do whatever they can to help us. And they're limited. The amount of resources they have depend on the ship that is available in the region. Right now it's a frigate, and the resources on board is limited. One of the things that the FCO has facilitated is for the past 8 years we've been having regular meetings annually for the disaster managers from the overseas territories. And when I started this job in 2005, 2006, I had absolutely no idea who the other disaster managers were. And over the years we've gotten to the point now where we understand each other's system and we know what our capabilities are. And I would be quite comfortable with any of the other disaster managers from the overseas territories coming in, giving us a hand, and I go home and rest for a couple of hours. And we've built that relationship, and we've built that cooperation in that in the event that one of us needs assistance, then the others can come in and help.
Okay. Now, during and after Hurricane Ivan, there were many, many heroes that we talked about before, in the form of individuals, in the form of other entities as well. I mean, we saw people, restaurants. I remember Mango Tree. They received a lot of food from supermarkets, places like Foster's that they knew were going to end up spoiling because eventually they weren't going to have, they had no power, and they eventually would spoil. And they cooked food, lots of food, gave to lots of people. But the two that stand out most in terms of entities, Cayman Airways. We can't ever underestimate or even overestimate the value of Cayman Airways. The last one out, the first one in, and the Cayman Islands Red Cross as well. Can both of you address those two entities and their role? And radio, and of course Radio Cayman, who stayed on the air, played the music, and kept people informed. As long as you had a radio that you can listen to, if you had electricity, or if you had a battery radio, Radio Cayman was right there as well.
Yeah, I mean, just from my end very quickly, certainly Radio Cayman was one of those heroes in terms of keeping everybody informed as to what was happening, giving people a chance to know what was happening in other parts of the island. I thought they did a fantastic job in rising to the occasion and doing their job exceptionally well. Again, the Red Cross, with international relief coming in, them being on the ground, the many volunteers that they had, that they were able to help people immediately who had lost their clothes and other belongings, and they were able to do that, and to provide assistance generally to many of the other key agencies. I thought they did a fantastic job. And of course, the decisions that Cayman Airways made in terms of offering free flights was tremendous. And they worked on a 24-hour basis for many days. I don't know how many days it was after the hurricane. Operating from, I remember the first flights we were operating from a hangar down at General Aviation Terminal because the airport was not ready to be operational. So the staff there, the pilots, the management are all to be commended for the decisions. I remember walking into the fire station in the morning after the hurricane and hearing Mr. Mike Adams tell the the key people there of the decision that Cayman Airways had made in terms of offering free flights, and everybody was so relieved because that meant that we would be able to get so many more people off the island. There were people that could not afford to buy tickets, so it was fantastic, and I think we will always owe Radio Cayman, Red Cross, Cayman Airways a debt of gratitude.
Okay, I'm told that we have a caller on the line. So before we get you to talk about the Red Cross in Cayman Islands Red Cross Society, we're going to take those callers. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. Connor.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Mom.
Mr. Manderson, Mr. O'Leary.
Good morning.
Say hello to your mom for me.
I will.
And, I'm going back to Hurricane Ivan. 1/2 an hour or 1 hour is not enough to talk about the storm and what happened. But what I would like to say is the money that was given for recovery was not managed properly, and there was no inspection done of the work. Maybe if some of the homeowners had been given the money, they might have been able to stretch it out. But it needs an administration set up to see that this money is used properly and that you get the benefits of it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, caller. Yeah, and unfortunately, there are so many people. I shouldn't say so many people, but there are some people out there who try to take advantage of the situation, and they're real opportunists. And we saw that after the rebuilding process, where contractors were given money to do work, and we tried to monitor and manage that as best as we could. And then we had situations also where there was collusion between the contractor and the homeowner so that someone could get some cash in hand if the part of the work that was done. And we certainly need to have the ability to monitor that closely, much more closely. And maybe you can respond to that as well after we take this other caller. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for taking my call again. Yes, there were many heroes, gentlemen, and believe it or not, one of at the height of the storm, when things were happening, I think when Mr. Jimmy Ryan got on the air with Mr. Dinwiddie, I think it was the governor, and those that were in there, they said it's we can only now turn ourselves over into the hand of God. There's nothing more that can be done. And I thought to myself, this is like an airplane in the air. We're in a situation where nobody can help us at this point in this terrible thing. But believe me, Radio Cayman, I said it from 2004, and I say it again. Mr. Loxley Banks should have been awarded an MBE or something for his role and the role of every person who worked in Radio Cayman. They were a source of comfort and relief. And then afterwards, of course, we heard about the Red Cross and Cayman Airways and all these other people and everyone. But these are things that should not be forgotten. Never, never forgotten. And someone, Mrs. Marin, went ahead and did the book. She did a book which I thought was excellent. And someone needs to continue that, because there are stories of heroism and that took place there that needs to be recorded. And so the other thing is, sir, I am wondering if this is a question, when it comes to the way that homes are built, the way that doors are fitted and roofs and all this stuff are built. Can you tell things like inside you have an emergency ladder and so on? Are these things which the planning department now require, as mandatory when one is being given an okay for building constructing a building, particularly dwelling homes?
Okay, we'll have Mr. Frederick answer that in conjunction with the other answers that he will give in relation to the other issues as well. Mr. Frederick, one, the Red Cross. Two, the question that the caller posed as well. And number three, the monitoring of any reconstruction, especially if it's financed by government.
Well, the Red Cross is and continues to be a partner with us at HMCI, and we have done a lot of work with the Red Cross in preparedness. One of the projects that we've worked on jointly is the community emergency response teams, where we have individuals in a district to form a team that would be able to assist their area or their district in the event of a disaster. And the Red Cross has been a partner with us on that. We've had teams established in Northside, Bordentown, and most recently in West Bay, a team of about 40 individuals. We're going to continue that relationship and building other community emergency response teams throughout the island. And we continue to work with the Red Cross in our disaster management program, and they're also a part of our council. And we have the Red Cross as part of the Human Concerns cluster, where they're also chair of the volunteer organization groups, so that we can better organize any help that might come from volunteer organizations. In terms of constructions of homes and some of the things she mentioned in her call, every home is required to have an access to the attic. Now, the code doesn't say that it need to be a pull-down stair, but there must be an access to the attic in every home. And I know that that's one of the things that are checked for when we do plan review, when we do inspections, to ensure that there's an access to the attic. Some of the things like doors, for example, like I said, it's not a requirement that they swing out, because it's one of the things that are exempt from homes. But the homes are built to withstand a high Category 3 storm. When we enacted the code, we made that decision because we were more likely to get a Category 3 or below storm than we were a 4 and above, based on historical evidence. And when we looked at the cost of building to Category 3 and building to Category 5, the cost really jumped. And so we weighed the pros and cons, and we came up with the average of, well, let's build to 130 miles per hour. So all the homes that were built after the code was enacted have been designed and built to withstand 130 miles per hour. After an event, the planning department doesn't have enough staff to be able to actively monitor the amount of construction and reconstruction that takes place after an event like a Hurricane Ivan. Just for example, just to get electricity back on, we had to have all of the homes re-inspected, and that took all of our inspectors, in addition to a number of electrical companies that lent us staff.
And you deputized
and
people.
We deputized those and gave them instructions and got them out to inspect the homes, working along with CUC, so that we were inspecting in an area that CUC was working in, and that was the only way that we could get back to get. If we had to depend on just the government inspectors, we probably would be still waiting to get electricity back in some areas. Depending on the situation, we have to use the resources that we have. One of the things that we've done is we've extended training in terms of damage assessment to CASE and to the Contractors Association, so that we have people that have had the training in the event that we need, so we can call on them to assist with damage assessment. And we actually saw that in Paloma, where we had some contractors assisting in damage assessment and inspections. And again, with the electrical part of it, we had electrical companies that step forward and say, okay, we'll help with the inspections. But even then, you'll still get some people that are kind of in it for their own. But for the most part, the guys that were assisting, and we have to rely on those people also to assist us after a major disaster in inspections to make sure that homes that are being repaired are done so that they can withstand the next onslaught.
Yeah. And I do know that, for instance, the CIDB government had earmarked, I think it was about $5 million for the repair of homes, and that was administered through CIDB. And the recovery operations, of which I headed up, we were involved in assessing, reviewing the applications, and we had employed the services of Mr. Ludlow Buckridge, who did a heck of a job as one person basically being assigned to monitoring and trying to police the contractors and the homeowners in terms of ensuring that they built or did the repairs according to what was put forward or what had been approved. As to the caller who called, and she had certainly a very important point that to discuss in an hour and a half, 2 hours, Hurricane Ivan is, a disservice of sorts. We just simply couldn't do it. But, wrap up now, and I'll let you go first, Mr. Frederick. There are several events that are going to take place this week in relation to the anniversary of Hurricane Ivan, including there's a huge supplement that the Cayman Compass is doing as well. So can you enlighten our guests, our listening audience, in relation to some of the activities that will be taking place?
Well, this is actually the kickoff to our media tour. We're on every talk show. We did realize that an hour was not enough time to talk about Ivan, so we're on every show that we can get on, and we try to include as many people as we can to share the experience and to share the discussion on Ivan. So I think whatever dial you turn to, whatever talk show you turn to for the next week, there will be some discussion on Ivan. In addition to that, we are having a 2-day symposium on the 10th and the 11th at the Westin. The focus on the first day is more towards in the morning. The focus will be on the high school kids, and we have a number of high schools that are bringing the kids in, and we have a program just for them. In the afternoon, starting at 1, will be the official opening, and we'll do some panel discussion similar to what we've been doing here with some of the people that were involved in the response and recovery, like yourself and Mr. Donovan Ebanks and Ms. Deanna Lukaloy and some others. On Thursday, we will shift the focus to business. We were talking about business continuity and some of those things. So on Thursday, we're going to focus more on business. We have partnered with the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, which is the disaster agency for CARICOM. And they will be bringing along individuals from the region that were affected by Hurricane Ivan, and they'll participate with us. They're co-sponsoring the session. So the second day is all about business. We're having SEMA do presentations. We got presentations on continuity of operations. So come out, join us at the Westin on the 10th and 11th, and like I say, in the afternoon of the 10th, we'll be having more discussions on Ivan. Actually, the theme for that day is Then and Now. We'll be talking about how things were then and where we have moved to and how things are now. So come and join us.
Great, thanks. And Mr. Madison, as chair of the National Hazard Management Council and also as head of the Civil Service, some closing remarks for our listening audience.
Yes, sir. Thank you. First of all, I want to commend Mr. Frederick and his team for the work they have done in getting us prepared for any type of disaster, and in particular for the work they're doing to ensure that we all remember Hurricane Ivan and appreciate, how fortunate we were, but also to keep our mind focused that we have not seen the worst and that things can be a lot worse, and to again mention the point that Mr. Frederick made in terms of persons educating themselves, listening to the radios, listening to the releases from HMCI in terms of if there is an approaching storm, to be prepared, to know where you're going to shelter, to know what are you going to do with your pets. I was struck by a hurricane conference that I attended a few years ago, and they were talking then about how many people that refuse to leave their homes in New Orleans because of their pets and end up everyone dying in their homes. So it's so very important that everyone knows what they're going to do with their pets, what they're going to do in the event of a major storm approaching, and also to pay attention to storm surge. If the Hurricane Ivan had hit us during the high tide, we would have, I believe, had a significant loss of life, and persons need to ensure that if they're living in low-lying areas or areas that are prone to flooding, that they need to pay attention to storm surge, and they should basically leave those areas and go to some place that is safe. So we want to have people recognize the devastation of Hurricane Ivan, that it was a significant part of our history. It is a proud moment for us as a country in terms of how we responded, how we worked together. Caymanians, non-Caymanians alike, working shoulder to shoulder to get our country rebuilt. So it's a proud time for us, and it's important that we remember it. But again, I want to thank all of the many heroes that are out there, too many to mention, who came to our aid, who made sacrifices, who risked their lives to get us through that devastation. So a big thank you, and of course, as head of the civil service, I want to particularly mention the many civil servants who, sacrificed their personal situation at home to come out to work to work in our emergency sections in terms of the police, the hospital, immigration, customs, fire. So many of those persons rose to the occasion. Speaking about immigration, I remember one of our staff members, lady named Donna Ebanks at the time, who had given birth a few months before, came off her maternity leave, brought her little child to the office so that she could be part of our crisis management. So, so many people did that. Our firemen, our police officers, did a tremendous job in, after the storm and keeping us all safe. So a big thank you to everyone, and I encourage everyone to come out on Wednesday. Is it Wednesday and Thursday? To the event at the Westin and be part of it.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Manderson. We're going to wrap up now. We've gone 15 minutes over time, but this is an important subject and one that we have so many memories of. And where we are today proves how resilient we are as a people. Folks, I want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keeper. There is always someone less fortunate than we are, and I encourage you to hold out a helping hand to them. We heard stories about people assisting each other. It brought everyone down to the common denominator, Hurricane Ivan. People, rich and poor, were standing on lines waiting to get water and everything else. So I want us to, if you can't perform a random act of kindness today, then give to a worthy charity. I want to thank Champion House Restaurant 2 and Champion House Cafe for being our main sponsor. Champion House Restaurant is located on Eastern Avenue, and Champion House Cafe at 1 Butterfield Place, formerly Comat Supermarket. We also want to thank Auto Spa for coming on as sponsors as well. And as we always remember, Paradise Coffee as well, for their contributions, and they're also one of our advertisers on Radio Cayman as well. I invite you to listen in on Wednesday when we will have the independent members. We will be inviting both independent members to be on because we again want to talk about their experiences in their districts and continue the conversation about Hurricane Ivan. So we want to talk about their experiences in their districts before, during, and after Hurricane Ivan as well. So we invite you to listen to us on Wednesday morning, and we will be continuing this conversation throughout the week here on Radio Cayman and elsewhere. I want to thank you for listening. Have a great day, and stay tuned to Radio Cayman.
Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.